headquarters at William Street, high above America's intersection in fashionable Midtown Atlanta. This is Matt Harrigan with the Adult Swim podcast. Today, co-creator of Toonami, Senior Vice President of Adult Swim On Air and Creative Director of Toonami, Jason DeMarco, tells us, well, I guess you'll have to find out what he tells us. Aha, here we go. The festival must be a total pain in the ass to make.
Yeah, it's a huge pain.
Where are you at in it right now?
We're locked.
Locked with the axe.
Yeah. And we announce next week. So.
Does it give you anxiety?
Oh, yeah, all the time. Like every day.
Is that your biggest stressor?
It's probably tied for that and like all the shows I'm doing now. I've got 7 shows in production. So
what are the shows?
They're all anime, all different like drama anime shows. Yeah. Blade Runner, and then 6 shows that haven't been announced.
So you have Blade Runner. Does that open doors for other shows? Because people are like, oh, fuck, they're doing Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Well, it legitimizes, not that it wasn't already, but...
No, it totally did. It was a shot across the bow. That's why they let us do the deal, even though it's pretty expensive and it's not the kind of deal Warner Brothers likes to do where we don't own 100% of it, because you're not going to own Blade Runner,
Yeah.
They normally wouldn't spend that much money on something they don't own, but they all felt what I felt, which is, make a big splash.
What animes do you really have your deep respect?
Over time or right now?
Yeah.
I mean, Cowboy Bebop, which is why Adult Swim showed it so many times, and Lazo loves it. Because that to me is one of the greatest shows ever made. And what's coming to Netflix, Neon Genesis Evangelion, which is the anime nerd like 2001.
Turn someone on to anime who doesn't know it and who maybe likes to hate it without knowing it. It shouldn't be hard.
I would say, are we doing the show right now, by the way?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't know. There's no intro or anything. I didn't know how it works.
I can introduce you.
No, I don't.
Ladies and gentlemen, here he is.
David Letterman.
Yeah, Jason DeMarco tells us why he loves new metal so much. Go ahead.
Anime, I like that question. How do you sell anime to somebody who thinks of like, oh, online nerds?
Yeah.
I would say if you like animation, if you don't like animation, don't bother. But if you like animation, but you would like to see animation do more than just tell jokes, then anime has literally every kind of show you could imagine. It has drama, has sports shows, it has action, comedy, it has romance, it has the breadth of different types of stories that you don't find in US or other animation around the world. And it's usually animated better, although not always.
So it has topics that aren't featured in American animation?
Yeah, there's like 4 or 5 right now ongoing basketball drama animes. One of my favorite ones of all time is one called Slam Dunk, and it's literally just, it's like Dragon Ball Z, but they're playing basketball. And like when someone does a dunk, it's like a huge power move. But I mean, I love that. That's what I love that about anime, that if I want to watch a show about 2 swimmers that fall in love, I can. Or if I want to
weirdly specific.
that's a show called Yuri on Ice.
Yeah.
That's skaters, not swimmers. But you can find anything you want. It's because in Japan, anime is so ubiquitous that everyone watches it. So there needs to be a broader depth of topics. And I think in the US it's changing thanks to like us and other people, but animation is still largely considered something for kids, or now we've entered into the era where it's like, okay, either it's for kids or it's Family Guy. Those are the two. It's either for kids or college kids. But the idea of like telling a story that has serious themes or that is trying to say something about anything beyond telling jokes in an animated format, that doesn't happen in the US.
Harder to replay, presumably.
They don't I mean, that's the other thing which Mike Lazo loves to tell me. Anime doesn't replay, Jason.
So you don't want to spend a lot of money on it because you can't show it over and over like Scooby-Doo.
Look, let me tell you something. Comedy replays. Anime don't replay. So,
do you agree?
I think that's true to some degree because anime is like drama. It's a story that's building to a conclusion. And if you're rerunning it and someone catches an episode and they've already seen the story, unlike comedy, like for some reason people love to see the same fucking jokes over and over and over. It doesn't bother them. But if you watch a movie that's a action movie or a drama and you're like, I know what this is going to happen, and forget it. Like they just don't watch it.
All right, so explain Law and Order replays.
Law and Order replays, I think, are a separate thing because they're not an overarching storyline. It's a one and done. You know what I mean? So it's
recurring characters, different crimes.
Yeah, so it's like if you like that case of the week, or maybe you just like. I mean, I think there's a certain type of television show that does well because it's just remixing the same elements over and over and over, which is why people watch game shows. And to me, Law and Order is just one step above a game show. It's like we just took a few things you liked, shuffled them, ba-boom, new episode. And I think with a good drama, you don't really know where it's going necessarily. And maybe when it's over, you're like, okay, I'm done. That was exhausting, even though it was great.
So turn people on to animes that, and it's animes, right? Not anime.
It's just anime.
Turn people on to anime.
Yeah.
Turn people on to anime that, like we were saying, who don't know it, low barrier to entry.
Oh, low barrier to entry is what we show on
Cowboy Bebop.
Cowboy Bebop, for sure.
That's it. Start there.
Start there. I would say because it's somewhat that creator is somewhat American. I mean, he's got some sort of an international point of view, so the show doesn't feel super Japanese. It doesn't have a cultural sort of barrier to get over. It's an outer space, adventure, which I think is pretty relatable to anyone who watches a sci-fi movie in the last 20 years. I also think Samurai Champloo, which we've already also shown, same creator, but also a very accessible sort of entry point into anime. Most anime these days people get into from starting as very young kids, Pokemon, Dragon Ball, the adventure stuff, and then they graduate to the more serious stuff later. That's normally how people do it.
So you're an expert on it, and what is your favorite?
I mean, I hate to be, I'm going to date myself because I'm 47 years old, but Akira is still my favorite. I don't think there's been an animated movie that looks as good as Akira, and I'm very bummed out that they're making a live action version.
Who's in it? Do you know?
I don't think they've cast it yet, but it's Taika Waititi is going to direct it, and he said he wants to cast all Asian unknowns, which I think is smart because it's a quintessentially Japanese movie, and I think putting an American cast in it would get a lot of criticism.
But he himself, Kiwi,
Yeah, I know. Well, that's what I mean. Like, it's not like it's a Japanese director, which it kind of should be, but, if you want to go down that path, all the criticism that the Ghost in the Shell movie got was because they cast Scarlett Johansson and it was directed by a white guy, when it's a story that's very much about Japan.
So you're dreading this?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm
pre-hating it.
I don't know. Are you one of those people that likes it when you hear they're going to do a live action version of a animated thing? Like, do you like the Disney live action versions of their?
I can't even think of any. So no. I mean, yeah, that's kind of cool to think of what a live action Lion King. I thought the play was awesome.
Oh yeah, the play is awesome.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
right?
It is awesome.
I thought I'd be bored to tears, and I was like, wow, I was moved by a Broadway musical for children.
Well, that's Julie Taymor. She's just awesome. But but for me, I would rather. I don't really care. It's not that I don't want to see it. I mean, like, I'm not against it. I just don't care about. To me, an animated version of something that's really good is good enough. Like, it's not like it's not real until it's live action, which I think some people actually do feel. They get really excited when they hear, "Oh, there's going to be a live action version of Ghost in the Shell."
Yeah.
For me, I don't mind if it stays animated forever. That's good enough for me. I don't want any Miyazaki movies to be turned into live action.
Oh man,
that would be a real bummer.
How often do you go to Japan?
At present, I am going more than I've ever gone, so about every other month for about a week at a time.
What's your strong move on flying to Japan?
Well, it's a 14-hour flight.
Yeah.
So you can't mess around. So number one, I do not have an easy time sleeping on planes, and I can't take pills because I took some Ambien once on one of these trips and it was working great, and then one night it didn't work. So I was up all night and had taken 2 Ambien. And so I got up in the morning and I was that in that creepy Ambien haze where you just feel like you want to die and you're cold and sweaty. Well, that's how Tiger Woods used to do that on purpose to have sex with girls. Did you hear about that?
No,
He used to take Ambien and be like, he used to tell his girls that this is when he was being a complete maniac. He would tell girls, "Let's take Ambien and not fall asleep and have weird sex," because it makes you feel like you're
Wow.
crazy.
Yeah.
So I went to a meeting like that, and the person I was with was like, "Don't ever fucking do that again because you seemed like a crazy person." And I was like, "Yeah, I
Wow.
was."
What were you doing that was weird?
I think I was just pale and sweaty and acting sketchy. Like they thought I was a cokehead or something. So I mean, the meeting went fine, but she told me afterwards, she was like, "You were freaking me out, man. You can't do that anymore." So now I don't do anything like that. So when I get on the plane, I immediately order a drink and keep drinking for a good 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah. What do you order?
Well, they have Macallan, which is my favorite scotch. They have Macallan 12, but they usually only have about 4 bottles. So I start out by ordering doubles of Macallan 12 till they're out.
You wear it out.
Then I switch to vodka and go clean. And I load up my iPad with. Last time was Deadwood, so I was catching up. I was re-watching all the Deadwoods in preparation for the Deadwood movie. I load my iPad up with tons of movies and TV shows. I don't ever watch what's on the actual plane.
So the scotch and vodka start to take effect as you're getting deeper and deeper into Deadwood or whatever show you're watching, and it comes to a point.
Yeah, and then they feed you.
Yeah.
And I am always sure to eat the full meal and dessert, so I'm nice and sleepy time. And then I crack my seat down, and if I'm lucky, I can get 3 hours of sleep. Maybe 4.
And you wake up bleary.
Yes.
Hungover a little bit.
And then they give you breakfast and coffee, and then you got a 2-hour car ride to the hotel from the airport.
But you've got it down to a science.
The get drunk system.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not for the squeamish in terms of jet lag. It's for real deal jet lag. About day 3, when you're in your 5th or 6th meeting and it's 4:00 in the afternoon, fluorescent lights, and your body thinks it's 3 a.m. and just wants you to go to sleep, and you're listening to someone translating long Japanese sentences. It's
you can make some questionable decisions.
Yeah, we'll take it. I love that show. Yeah,
and it's a peculiar thing to purchase anime from
the
Japanese culture.
It's a very different thing. Yeah, I mean, I think that to some degree we've had it easy because Toonami's been around now for 21 years, and a lot of the animation houses in Japan have all heard of it.
Yeah.
So to some degree, we have some legitimacy. We're not if you don't have either the name of Netflix and a giant bag of money that they're bringing into the room, or you don't know someone, it's pretty hard to get in with a lot of these production companies because they don't want their time wasted. So if we call, though, they know we're for real, so they take our meetings.
Have the other streaming services changed the anime industry in America?
Profoundly changed it, yeah. I mean, Netflix pays about twice to 3 times more than they need to for pretty much every anime they buy. They probably do that for every show, but they definitely do it for anime. And it, as a result, has changed the anime business. There are less production houses than ever, and now they're all booked up years out, like 3 years out. Like the next project you can get with any of them would start in about 3 years. And the prices of all the shows have risen because a rising tide lifts all boats. And Netflix is paying more, which means we have to pay more. Whoever else is in market, Hulu, Funimation, all the different players have to pay more too.
What do they know of or speak of, or what do they have an opinion about Toonami?
They just know we show anime and we've done a respectful job over the years, and that we've helped make shows big. In the case of certain directors, they will literally be like, "Oh yeah," because sometimes a show will do well in the US that didn't do well in Japan, which is still good for the director because the director can then say, "Well, it wasn't a hit here, but overseas it did great, so it still made its money back." we sold some merch, so here's my next idea, like the Cowboy Bebop creator, he's a good example. That show didn't do that great in Japan, but it did so well over here that it literally changed his whole life. So I think what you see is just it's years of like, oh, all the different. I mean, we've probably shown 200 shows at this point, 300. So at that point, we have 300 different stories of people that have had their show shown here, and either it helped them or it had no effect, but it doesn't hurt.
Toonami's turned a lot of people on anime.
Yeah. Yep.
At most of America, it's their introduction to anime.
I would say that maybe not as much now because there are so many streaming services. But even now, we're still introducing people to anime because I get people hitting us up all the time. And when we go to cons and stuff, who say, "Oh, yeah, my first anime was like 3 years ago. I watched like kids." And then there's a ton of people who grew up in our 90s era watching Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon and, one of the shows. It's always one particular gateway show. And that's always been our job, is to service the new fan as well as the existing fan. But we always try to keep an eye on like the idea that it's TV. So it's not streaming, it's not a website, it's not where people are deep diving on one thing because they love it so much. The whole idea of TV is I'm flipping around, it's not the whole idea, but it's part of it. I'm flipping around, I don't know what I'm going to find. And one thing TV does well that I think the internet doesn't really is serve you up something you didn't know you wanted because you just land on it. We don't really do that anymore.
Like how music used to arrive.
Pretty much.
Turn on the radio.
And now all anyone does is deep dive into the ass of their own algorithm. So it's like, oh, you like metal? Here's 50,000 other metal bands. And so soon enough, that's your bubble. And before you were exposed, I would argue maybe it was harder to find the rare stuff, but you were exposed to a lot more different types of things. And I think that's something we're kind of losing, and TV still does.
Convenience has fucked up
a lot.
Deep dives into. When you were a kid, when I was a kid, you'd put on a record and you'd be too lazy to go up and change it, so you'd hear the second or third or fourth song, and then eventually you'd like those deep cuts better than what you intended.
And you're reading the liner notes just because you're sitting there listening and you're bored. And when you were sitting there listening, you didn't have your phone to screw around on. So you were reading the liner notes, looking at the cover, wondering about, oh, I wonder where these guys are from. Then you find a magazine. Oh, look, I can read about where they're from. Now it's in your pocket. All human knowledge is in your pocket. So you hear a song for the first time, you Shazam it, you see the name of the band, you Wikipedia who they are, you download 10 songs, give me their best hits.
So you've trying to think about how to connect it. But
you're trying to connect the music thing?
I'm trying to connect the music thing to the anime thing. You've probably already done it. You make the connection.
It started with Toonami, so there is a connection. Basically, when I started here working on Toonami I started working at Turner TNT in 1996. I started working on Toonami 6 months later to helping develop it. When we were putting it together, there was not good library music, which is, for people who don't know, library music is just the Turner or Warner Brothers buys thousands of songs that are legally cleared for us to use that just exist as background music for like news stories or promos or whatever. So we were trying to save money for Toonami, so we were told just go use a bunch of the already pre-licensed music. But we knew we didn't want to use like screaming guitar rock, which is what most kids shows had then. And they didn't have anything that was rap. They didn't have any hip hop. They didn't have any electronic music, which is something that I've always listened to. So I started going out and trying to find people who made music for cheap. So there was this local guy. He lived in Athens at the time, DJ Danger Mouse, and he was a DJ who also made music. So I hooked up with him and started buying beats from him. We bought beats from Tommy Guerrero, the famous skater from back in the day. And we just started buying music that we could own and use however we wanted. And kind of that started it all kind of stemmed out of that. And then from there, that led eventually in a roundabout way. It all happens in a roundabout way, but it led to Danger Doom, which was the album we did with Danger Mouse and MF Doom and a bunch of Adult Swim characters. And then from Danger Doom, that led to us having our own label, William Street Records, which is where we are now, where we're releasing a song every week and we're doing a festival. And, it's not part of William Street Records, but, you guys are having bands in Fish Center, and music in Adult Swim is just a thing now that everyone just knows. Adult Swim loves music, and we will feature a lot of music.
But it's you turning people on to anime. It's you turning people on to music that you like.
Yeah.
You like turning people on to things.
Yes,
personally,
I do. Yes, I
get satisfaction out of that.
Yeah, I love doing that. I mean, one of my favorite things as a consumer of media is discovering a new thing. Especially when you're like us and you work in media, you can get so jaded. You've heard of everything. You've heard every story. You know all the producers, and it's a little bit easier to be like, that's going to be a bag of shit. You know what I mean? So you're a lot more surprised when you're like, oh, it was really good, whatever it was. And I love that feeling of discovering a new, exciting thing that I didn't know about.
Like what have you been turned on to? I'll give you one, and you give me one.
Well, you know who's good at turning me on to things? Lazo is.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
He turned me on to Tenarowin.
Yeah, they're awesome. Yeah, they're really good.
Nothing I would have ever discovered.
Yeah, Tuareg, Led Zeppelin. Yeah,
totally.
He turned me on to this book, and I wish I could remember the name of it. I'm reading it right now. I'm just terrible with names, but it's about the assassination of Heydrich, the Nazi. He was like Hitler's third in command, and it's fascinating. It's really great. Lazo and I talk books a lot because he reads more than me, so he always turns me on to like with music. Lazo doesn't turn me on to as much stuff because. He's a little bit more narrow in his taste than I am nowadays, now that he's gotten older and crankier. But with books, he reads way more than I do. He's way more. I'm always reading a book, but Lazo only reads like literature. He doesn't read like a Jack Reacher book,
right?
Which is what I do. I read like one or two, which I would argue are like harder to read books that I'm going to learn something.
Yeah.
And then I read one or two like Stephen King or Jack Reacher, or just some bullshit plain book that I can relax with. Lazo doesn't read any of those. He only wants like, give me the straight dope. If it's not Faulkner, get out of my face.
He made all of us read Faulkner during one season of Space Ghost, and everyone was just like one after the next,
like,
just like
why?
out. Yeah. Yeah, come on.
I love Faulkner, but it's not an easy. He's not any.
No.
And Lazo's
curling
like
flower
start.
spaces.
Yeah, he's like start with As I Lay Dying.
Yeah,
like
that's
real easy read.
Right.
As I Lay Dying. Where we were in a book. He's not in the book club anymore, but we were in a book club for a while, and his suggestions were always that. And you always the man almost never picks something I didn't like. At least
tell me about the book club. I can't imagine you guys in a book club. That sounds like such an afternoon mom thing.
Well, It was started by Ali Green, who you've had on this show.
Yeah.
And it was like 6 people, and Lazo was one of them, and Dave Hughes is in as well. And they were already doing it. They invited me. They'd been doing it for like a year, and
right.
I don't know how they started doing it. I think Ollie and Lazo were talking about books, and she said, well, why don't we have a book club? We'll all read a book.
Yeah.
And we'll get together and talk about it. And the approach was hilarious because for some people, the book club is more like, let's just get a bunch of food and booze, and we'll talk about the book, and then we're just going to get drunk and talk and have fun. Like it's a party. And Lazo's approach was, why aren't we talking about this book in greater detail? He wanted to do it like, he got to the point where he was like, this is just bullshit. We need to be meeting once a week after work and talking about where we are in the book every week. And we were all like, that's when it becomes homework, dude. That's not fun. And he wanted to make it like, let's really. But I will say that when it didn't always happen, because everyone had to either really hate the book or really love the book for this to happen. But when we would read a book that we all loved or hated, we would have some really great discussions where people would mention things I didn't catch, or would bring up points about a book that I completely disagreed with, and we would get into deeper discussions from there. Those are always super fun. The ones that were like more lackluster was when we all thought a book was like fine. Then we really had nothing to say, because we'd be like, Yeah, it was fine. Pass me the booze, please.
That sounds very civilized.
It
That you would
was.
sit around and have conversations about books with your coworkers.
That's what we did. Yeah, we still do it. We are reading. I couldn't finish it because I hated it. We Catch-22 is the book we're reading right now.
Did he turn you on to the Strange Last Voyage of Donald Crowhurst?
Yes, he tried. He tried to. I
You didn't like it?
check it. I didn't check it out.
Dude, run, don't walk.
Oh, really?
Oh my gosh, unbelievable.
All right. Well, he
turns people onto things. You turn people onto things.
Yeah. I think that's so do you. I think that's why anyone does what we do, right? I mean, you want to show people something. Let me show you a story. Let me show you a song. Let me show you a joke. I mean, it's
show business.
It's wanting to communicate with people on some level. And I think that's why I do the music stuff. And the other reason I do the music stuff is because, to put it in a way that's going to sound ridiculous, but it's true, I believe people that make a living doing just art, not people who work for a corporation like you and I do, but like actual people who are out there making their living off of like songs or paintings or whatever. I believe that's a very brave and hard thing to do these days. And I have always felt like, to the degree I could, I wanted to use the support I have at a corporate level to help people both get money and exposure for doing that.
It's not easy to afford that artistry or curiosity or whatever they're doing. So as a member of a corporation who can support that,
that's what I want to do.
The Medicis.
One of my proudest moments is one of the guys from one of the record labels we work with, Ghostly Recordings. He said people around his office call me the Robin Hood of Cartoon Network because I was taking money from the rich and giving to the poor, which is a little ridiculous, but you get the idea. Like that's supporting people who make art, to me, is very, very important for both my personal satisfaction and just generally for society. I think society devalues art, and I don't think it should be.
And maybe you wouldn't have the same opportunity at a major network.
No way. Absolutely not. I mean, like, Adult Swim, really, it's Turner and Adult Swim both. So working at Turner at the time, which Turner no longer really exists, but Turner's whole thing was, you want to do something outside of your job parameters? Cool, go do it for a year, and if you do a good job at it, maybe we'll start paying you for it. And then Adult Swim was another layer on top of that, which is, do it and have it be really good, and then maybe I'll give you the tiniest amount of money for it. Nowhere else I can say definitively, there is nowhere else other than Adult Swim I could have had the rope and the patience to be able to slowly build a music program or to slowly build Toonami into what it is, because most major corporations, everything's turning over all the time and they don't have time to like see if something grows. And one great thing about Adult Swim, whether you're talking about Aqua Teen or Squidbillies or any number of things that Adult Swim has done, it's been a slow, like, let's just see where it goes and maybe it'll turn into something. And that kind of patience is incredibly rare in our sphere.
Weird little garden.
Yeah, that's really exactly right. And the freedom that we have had, all of us, to fail or succeed based on our own idea is something you don't get. And I know people who've worked at every network, and you don't get it anywhere else. Disney employees are not allowed to dick around like we are.
That's too bad.
It is. I mean, imagine the good shit that could come out of Disney if they didn't do what they do. You know, not that they're hurting for money.
So you're staring down the barrel of a major American music festival.
Yeah,
just to bring you back to reality.
Slow down. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I saw the venue.
Yes.
It's fucking crazy. In a good way.
All right. Well, yes, we are doing a second year of the festival. Year one did well enough that the network said, hey, let's try it again. So we have a new venue.
It was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of
The
fun.
first year.
I think we learned a lot. I think we learned sort of what's enough bands, what's too many, what time do you want to start, how much money do you want to charge. We learned a lot about the basics because we're a TV network. We're not a festival. But so I have the lucky and unlucky job of picking all the bands. And last year was easy and hard at the same time because last year it was, okay, we're going to put on a festival, but you don't have anywhere near the amount of money that a normal festival does. So you're going to have to just call in favors. So call in all your friends and tell them we'll pay them half what they're worth. And that was literally what that festival was last year. Was every band there was people I knew personally and asked as a favor, would you play our festival? Because we had an ongoing relationship, and most of them played for 2/3 of what they normally get.
So you have to make those calls, and does that give you anxiety to do that? Or do you feel like it's an investment?
It depends on the band. I mean, sometimes I felt like, it's a little weird to be asking this. And then sometimes, like with Run the Jewels, those guys I know well enough that they knew why I was asking that. And I have, over the years, helped them and given them money and material help. So they felt like they owed us. So that felt like an even trade. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a little weird when you're asking a lower level band. Like, I know you don't make much anyway, but how about making even less? So this year, because I exhausted my Rolodex last year of people I know well enough to not pay as much, this year we got a little more money in the budget, so everyone appearing this year is being paid their normal, rate. So this year it was more of an exercise of like, what bands do I like and think I'd like to see at our festival that feel like they make sense for Adult Swim and are a good balance of the types of genres we want to have. And then you're worrying about stuff like the math of, hey, they just played LA 2 months before, so maybe we don't want to have them because it'll cut into our ticket sales. And then like, oh, their tour routing takes them to Kalamazoo first, and all that's going to screw up. So all that is a total nightmare. And then you're also working with like, okay, we're trying to get the balance 50-50 male-female, which I don't think we got to, but we got close. And the festival circuit is exploding right now. There's a million festivals. So locking down bands that aren't locked down already proved very challenging. I learned a lot.
How do you? I'm dying. I would love to hear the conversations about where is my name going to be on the poster.
You know what? That's actually not that big of a deal because pretty much it's in the beginning of the conversation you have with the agent or the management. They say, "Is this a headlining slot?" And you say no. And if you say no, that means their name isn't first on the poster. If you say, no, it's not a headlining slot, and they get the poster because you have to send it to them to look at, and their name is huge bold letters like they're headlining, they're going to be mad. So you just have to sort of tell them in advance and know that when you say to someone, you are one of our headliners, that will give them more negotiating power in terms of, well, we want more money because we're one of the main draws.
And it's a puzzle because months from now, fortunes will rise and fall.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, you can book someone and suddenly by the time they get to your festival, they're sort of way cooled off or they played 30 billion shows.
Yeah.
And then you can get someone that hasn't played much at all and is a rising star that you just got lucky.
So you've just got to read the tea leaves as best you can.
Pretty much. I mean, all I've ever done is what I do almost for anime, but I just literally go with my gut. It's like, I like this based on what I'm seeing. I think they're going to keep growing and getting better. And I mean, my guidelines are pretty much, I don't really want to go outside of the genres of music you would hear on Adult Swim's air very often. It's pretty curated, unless it's something that's so perfect. Like if I could get Dolly Parton, I would get Dolly Parton in a heartbeat.
Can you get Dolly Parton?
You can get Dolly Parton. We couldn't get her this year, but you can get her if you're willing to pay the money. Dolly plays.
Yeah.
So Dolly Parton
would
be amazing, right?
Yeah.
And so like that kind of thing, I don't worry about. Well, we don't use Dolly Parton on the air very much. Like, who cares?
A lot of people would be like, "Why the fuck is Dolly Parton playing the Adult Swim Festival?"
But that, in a way, makes it a perfect Adult Swim thing.
Yeah.
So it's sort of a mix of that. Like we're gonna have a lot of electronic music. We're gonna have some metal. We're gonna have some rap, of course, and then we're gonna have some other weird stuff. and that's kind of what makes it feel right. And then a bunch of comedy, and this year we're going to have a bunch of panels, and there's going to be a Squidbillies one and a Robot Chicken one. And
How does comedy fit in with the music, like in the dynamic of the evening's show?
This year there's only going to be one or two comedians that are going to be on the main stage. The rest, they're in this venue. There's like a large club inside this place that's like 1,500 people, can fit like 1,500 people. So a lot of the comedy and the panels will be in there because it'd be kind of stupid for them to be on this giant stage.
A panel.
Yeah, like that was the only thing that felt a little weird to me last year is you had people like Joe Pera on this giant stage speaking out to this huge amount of people who are just wandering around.
Yeah.
And I kind of would rather see Joe Pera in a club where everybody wants to be there and they're like psyched about Joe Pera. And then there's bands going at the same time outside. So that's the other thing. There won't be like the music bleed of like the guy's trying to do his comedy set and there's like a metal band, like,
Right.
and I think,
Shut up.
Yeah, I think we're one of the only, festivals that does that. And I think it's tricky. That's why you don't see it that often because it's tricky.
Do you feel like you have to put yourself to de-age yourself to insert sort of? Do you have to pretend that you're younger to make decisions in your job?
I know what you mean, but I don't think so now. I mean, in some ways, I'm a crotchety old man, but luckily, in the way of remaining open to new sounds or new ideas in terms of media, I think all that's important there is that you're constantly engaging with whatever new stuff is out there so that you're not always sort of coming from a place of, well, this is what I liked when I was 25 and now this is all I will ever like. Because to me, it's really hard to be in a job like this and have that point of view because then you're almost coming at it in a cynical way, like, well, kids like this bullshit, so I guess we'll try this. And for me, I'm lucky enough to be like, I genuinely like this stuff. I genuinely like most of the shows we show. I genuinely like all of the music we put on the air. And if I don't like it, I don't mess with it. And I think part of the way to do that is to make sure that you're listening to when people are saying this new thing is so hot, you check it out. And like maybe you're like, oh, I've seen this a million times before. I'm 47 years old. I've seen most of it before. But at the same time, sometimes I give it a chance and I find myself liking it. It's like what you talked about with listening to a deep cut a couple times. Sometimes the new sound requires your old brain to be like, what? And then you sort of find yourself coming around. And then sometimes you don't. But I think it's more important to keep an open ear and an open eye. And it's not so much as trying to put myself in a younger person's shoes. It's trying to look at new art and engage with it in the same respectful, open way I would engage with the art I grew up with, like Earth, Wind, and Fire and, Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and the stuff I grew up with that my mom played. To me, that stuff was revelatory. But I also will hear about one or two albums a year that I think are revelatory, that are brand new. And as long as that keeps going, I think I'm right for this job. The day I stop feeling that way, I should stop doing this.
What are some things that you've been turned on to lately outside of the network?
Outside of the network, the show Too Old to Die Young, I love. It's not for everyone. It's on Amazon. It's Nicholas Winding Refn who did Drive. So if you don't like him, you probably wouldn't like it, but it's like every episode is an hour and a half and there are 10 of them. So it's like 10 movies and they're super, super slow. It's super violent and super weird. And I absolutely love it. That's what I'm watching right now. That just came out last week. So I'm sort of deep in that right now. I loved, I Think You Should Leave, the Netflix comedy.
Yeah, the best, right?
Yeah, it's so good.
The bones are his money.
Yeah, Turbo Team. I mean, I just like that from the first skit where he's like he has the job interview and he's trying to pretend that the door pushes out when it doesn't.
Yeah.
And so he's just shoving it and he starts drooling. Like it owes so much to Tim and Eric, but it's still so funny.
I was watching it at the doctor on my iPad. And I had tears rolling down my face, and people were looking at me like, "Oh man, he's really sick. He's really sad to be here."
I don't think I've laughed at a show that hard in a long
Yeah.
time. And so I hate Netflix, but I have to give it to them for funding that show. That should have been us. What else?
What concerts do you go to?
I don't go to that many. I have. You know what it is. I was thinking about this the other day. I have periods where I go a lot, and periods where I won't go to a show for like a year, and then I'll go like every month or twice a month for a year. It just sort of goes like that. I'm in sort of a period right now where I don't see as. I just saw Anderson .Paak with Thundercat and Earl Sweatshirt in New York. That was really good. But I don't. A lot of times I think I want to go to a show. Like I bought tickets for Lizzo, and I wanted to go see Lizzo. And then as it came around, I was like, I don't feel like going out tonight. And I just gave the ticket to my wife, and she went with her friend.
So you're a crotchety old man in some ways?
Oh, yeah. I don't like crowds, and I don't like being around people.
People on your lawn.
And I get real tired of being in public places and having to talk to strangers. So going out to a show, I have to really love the band. I have to be like, I heard they have an amazing live show or have seen them, or I have to just think the artist is incredible. And then it's sort of like there's no good way to find out bands are coming to your town. I used to just look at Creative Loafing every week and like flip to the back.
Yeah.
Now, unless you find out some other way, how do you know? I don't know how anyone finds out these bands are coming because I'm always like, oh shit, I didn't know they were here. I would have loved to see that. Like,
totally.
And I found this one app that you put in every band that you like, and they give you an update.
Bands in town.
Yeah, but that thing sucks. It doesn't work well.
We have a team down there that assembles the list of everyone who's coming through town, so we'll put you on this CC list.
Please, that would help a lot. But yeah, I think the last one I was really excited about was I was going to see the Misfits play New Year's Eve in L.A., and then that fell through. For whatever reason, I had a personal thing and couldn't go. The last show I could say was an amazing show that I saw was Prince at Madison Square Garden, which was like 5 years ago.
Oh yeah, before he died.
It'd be really amazing if after he died. My wife was at his last show.
Oh, no way.
Which again, I had tickets for.
Here at the Fox.
Yeah. I had tickets for that. And at the last minute, I was like, it's him with a piano. He's playing a bunch of gospel. I think I'll skip it and see the next one. And she went with a friend, and then ended up being the last time.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, lesson learned, kids. When you have a chance to see your favorite, because Prince is one of my favorite artists.
Yeah.
So, and I had seen him 2 or 3 times already, so that's why I was like, when you have tickets and you have a chance to see one of your favorite artists, go.
Get off your ass.
Yeah, pretty much.
What are some of the best concerts you've ever seen? Think through your history.
Yeah. Okay, so this is going to sound weird, but the Boredoms, the New York punk rock band, they're Japanese punk band. They were Lollapalooza 2. For the East Coast leg of Lollapalooza, they were one of the opening bands. And one of the greatest experiences of my concert-going life is seeing the Boredoms, who are the ultimate weird punk rock art freak-out band, playing to a bunch of jocks who were just waiting for Smashing Pumpkins to come on. And they were so confused and angry at the Boredoms that it made it an even more enjoyable show, which the Boredoms are always a great show. But it was even better because there were these super pissed off people in the crowd who were like, what is this garbage? Like they were yelling, and it made it really great. Outkast, for sure. Both the Adult Swim party where I got to see him really up close, and then I have seen him a couple years before, 10 years before that.
Where?
Lakewood. Long time ago, though. We're talking early 2000s when they were like probably they were AT-Aliens. Not even. Sorry, it would be Equimini. 3rd album. Slayer, Upstate New York. Amazing. There are just some band. One that I didn't think I really would feel this way was Bon Iver, who I'm not really a Bon Iver kind of guy. and I saw Bon Iver at Center Stage, and it was amazing. It might be because I was not 100% sober,
Yeah.
but he had like a sing along, and everybody was clapping, and it was like really great. It was terrific. I was blown away. I went in like, and then like came out loving it. And that's my favorite live experience, when I go thinking this will be fine, and then it blows me away. My Bloody Valentine at Masquerade in 1990 would be one of my favorite shows. They had super, super heavy fog machines, and they had these big horizontal red lasers, strobes that blinked really fast. And so when they filled the room with so much smoke, and they had the laser strobing, and then they had their speakers turned up all like so like louder than any metal band I've ever seen, like the most crushing wall of sound with that reverb and feedback. When they hit those strobes, it did something to my inner ear, so I got dizzy. Like I felt like I was going to fall down. That was amazing.
Wow. Full body.
What about you?
I saw Neil Young at the Orlando Arena in 1990, and it made me think the same thing. I had the worst seat in the way back of the arena with Crazy Horse, and he played "Blown in the Wind" and just went clang.
Yeah.
You know how many times? Clang. Just knocked me out.
I love that album from that Arc Weld.
And then I think it forever damaged his hearing.
It did. Well, it's so loud too. I mean, like that. You can listen to it now, and it's like, like it's crazy. But I love that album though.
Turn people onto one thing.
Turn people onto
one thing that we didn't talk about.
Right,
that maybe that's an unknown thing.
I'm gonna pull up my phone and find a band.
Find a band
that I really like.
Turn me on to something that I don't know. Turn the listener on to something that's so obscure.
I don't think I can do. I don't know how obscure it is. I would say right now there's a guy called Denzel Curry. He's a rapper from Florida. He just put out an album called Zoo, and I think he's incredible, and the album's incredible. I think he could be the next Outkast.
Denzel Curry.
So
we'll listen to this podcast again in a year.
And
we'll bring you back in.
What's up with Denzel Curry, man?
Yeah. All right.
I hope so. I hope he should be the biggest rapper in the world.
Jason DeMarco.
That's me.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Be sure to visit adultswim.com/podcast for links to some of the things Jason and I were just talking about. And as always, we'd love to hear from you. adultswimpodcast@gmail.com. Send us your questions, requests, harsh words, whatever. Thanks to Dave Bonowitz for editing this, and Christina Loringer for her help, and thanks to you, the listener, for listening. Music from this episode is a song called Bochicha from the album Sunbronze Greek Gods by Dom. Thanks for listening.